We live in the loudest era in human history, a world that demands your attention every second, where your value is measured by how much you share and your focus is shattered by 1,000 notifications. You feel exhausted, not because you're working too hard, but because you are leaking power. Every time you talk about your goals, every time you scroll for motivation, every time you react to the noise, you lose a piece of yourself. 800 years ago, there was an elite brotherhood that knew a secret we've forgotten. They were the Teutonic Knights, the Iron Monks. They were the most feared heavy cavalry in Europe, but their greatest battles weren't fought with steel. They were fought in absolute, crushing silence. While modern men are desperate to be noticed, these warriors were sworn to be invisible behind their vows. They didn't seek inspiration. They built a mental fortress that no storm and no enemy could breach. If you feel distracted, aimless, or weak, it's because your gates are wide open. Today, we are entering the cloister. I'm going to show you the Iron Monk Protocol, the 5 brutal laws of silence and discipline that will turn your mind into a castle capable of surviving a perpetual siege. Welcome to Hypothetics. Let's shut the gates. Path 1. The Law of the Mental Cloister. Silence is the shield of the fortress. From the rule of the Teutonic Order. For the Teutonic Knight, the cloister was more than just a stone building. It was a psychological boundary that separated the sacred from the profane. Behind those walls, the chaos of the outside world, the politics, the rumors, and the petty distractions of the peasantry was strictly forbidden. The Iron Monks understood that the mind is like a castle. If the gates are always open, it isn't a fortress, it's a thoroughfare. By limiting who and what could enter their space, they preserved their mana for the only 2 things that mattered: their spiritual devotion and their lethal efficiency on the battlefield. They didn't just live in a cloister, they became one. In your normal day world, you are living in a fortress with no gates. You are accessible to everyone at every hour for any reason. Your phone is a direct breach in your mental walls, allowing the opinions of strangers, the stress of the news, and the pings of low-value notifications to flood your psyche before you've even had your first cup of coffee. You feel scattered and weak because you have allowed your mental cloister to be demolished. If the entire world has a key to your mind, you aren't the commander of your life. You are a servant to the noise. You are leaking power because you refuse to build a wall. True discipline begins with a lockout. You must create your own mental cloister, a dedicated time or space where the modern world is physically and digitally barred from entry. This isn't about being antisocial. It's about being pro-sovereignty. When you turn off the notifications, when you close the door, and when you stop reacting to the noise, you are rebuilding the gates of your fortress. You don't need more motivation. You need more solitude. Only in the silence of the cloister can you hear your own intuition and sharpen your intent. Rule number 1. If you want to be a master of your mission, you must first be the gatekeeper of your mind. Guard the gate or lose the castle. Path 2. The Law of the Vow of Silence. Silence is the mother of all virtues, and the tongue is the enemy of the heart. From the rule of the Teutonic Order, for the Iron Monk, speech was a resource, not a right. In the long winters of the Baltic, the knights lived under a strict code of silence. They understood that every idle word spoken was a leak in their spiritual armor. They didn't engage in gossip, they didn't complain about the cold, and they never bragged about their victories. When they did speak, their words were like iron strikes, precise, rare, and heavy with intent. By keeping their mouths shut, they forced their internal pressure to build, turning that silent energy into a devastating force on the battlefield. They knew that a man who can control his tongue can control his destiny. In the modern world, we are suffering from goal leakage. We have been told to share our journey and stay accountable by telling everyone our plans. But psychology tells us the opposite. When you announce your goals to the world, your brain receives a premature reward. It releases the same dopamine you would get from actually achieving the goal, making you feel satisfied before you've even started the work. You talk about the business, you post about the workout, and you share the vision, and then you lose the hunger to actually do it. You are spending your success on social media likes instead of investing it in the grind. You are all roar and no bite. The Iron Monk protocol requires you to kill the announcement. Stop telling people what you are going to do and start showing them what you did. When you move in total silence, you retain the manic energy of your ambition. You don't waste it on validation from people who haven't earned the right to hear your plans. This silence creates a vacuum that only action can fill. If you want to achieve something great, you must be willing to be misunderstood, ignored, and invisible until the work is finished. Rule number 2, move in the shadows of silence. Let your results be the first time the world hears your voice. Path 3, the law of the frozen forest. The knight shall not fear the frost, for the fire of his mission burns from within, derived from the spirit of the Northern Crusades. The Teutonic Knights did not fight in the sun-drenched plains of the south. They campaigned in the sub-zero impenetrable forests of the Baltic North. To these iron monks, weather was never an excuse, it was a test. They did not wait for the spring thaw to march, nor did they retreat when the storms turned the earth into jagged ice. They understood that if you only fight when the sun is shining, you are at the mercy of the seasons. By training their bodies to function in the frozen forest, they became masters of the environment that broke every other army. Their discipline wasn't fueled by the warmth of the sun, but by the internal furnace of their vow. In your world, the frost is your lack of motivation. We have become a culture of fair-weather warriors. We wait for the perfect mood, the right amount of sleep, or the spark of inspiration before we sit down to do the work. You tell yourself you'll start the project when you feel ready, or you'll hit the gym when the vibes are right. But the desert of the soul and the frozen forest of reality doesn't care about your feelings. While you are waiting for the warmth of motivation to find you, the man who has mastered the frost is already miles ahead. Motivation is a luxury for the amateur. Discipline is the necessity of the professional. The Iron Monk protocol demands that you stop negotiating with the temperature of your environment. You must learn to work when you are cold, tired, and uninspired. True strength is the ability to maintain your pace when the mood has long since left you. When you perform in the middle of your own internal winter, you are building a version of yourself that is immune to external circumstances. You are no longer a slave to the weather of your emotions. If you only move when you feel like it, you aren't a warrior. You're a leaf in the wind. Rule number 3, don't wait for the fire. Be the fire. Perform in the frost or be buried by it. Path 4, the law of the uniform soul. The knight is nothing, the order is everything, derived from the statutes of the Teutonic order. The Teutonic Knight didn't ride into battle with a personal coat of arms or a colorful family banner. He wore a plain white surcoat with a simple, stark black cross. In a world of noble vanity, where men fought for their individual names to be sung by poets, the Iron Monk was anonymous. He was stripped of his title, his family pride, and his ego. He wasn't an individual hero. He was a single cell in a massive, unyielding organism. By killing the I, he became part of a we that was invincible. He understood that when you no longer care about who gets the credit, you become a force that cannot be distracted or discouraged. We live in the era of the main character syndrome. We are obsessed with building our personal brands, our curated aesthetics, and our public identities before we've actually achieved anything of substance. We want the world to recognize our uniqueness before we've mastered a single skill. This egocentrism is a heavy chain. Every time you worry about how you look, how you're being perceived, or why you aren't getting enough likes, you are diverting energy away from the actual mission. Your ego is a parasite that eats your productivity. You are so busy trying to be someone that you've forgotten how to do something. The Iron Monk protocol requires a death of the ego. You must be willing to be a uniform soul, to be the person who does the dirty, unglamorous work without needing a spotlight. When you detach your identity from the results and focus entirely on the quality of the output, you gain a terrifying level of focus. You don't get hurt by criticism, and you don't get lazy from praise, because neither of those things belongs to you. They belong to the work. Stop trying to stand out and start trying to be the most reliable, effective part of the machine. Rule number 4, kill the me to save the mission. Anonymity is power. Path 5, the law of the Perpetual Siege. A wall is only as strong as the patience of the man behind it. Traditional Teutonic military maxim. The Teutonic Knights were the master architects of the eternal fortress. They didn't build simple wooden outposts. They constructed massive, self-sufficient brick giants like Malbork Castle, structures designed to withstand isolation and enemy sieges that could last for years. When an Iron Monk entered a fortress, he didn't ask when he would be relieved or when the battle would end. He accepted that the siege was his permanent reality. He had the food, the faith, and the fortitude to wait out any storm. He didn't plan for a quick victory. He planned for indefinite endurance. In your life, you're likely suffering from the sprint fallacy. You approach your goals like a 100-meter dash, expecting a massive reward within 30 days. When the results don't come immediately, or when life sieges you with unexpected bills, health issues, or family stress, you abandon the walls. You think the struggle means you're losing, when in reality, the struggle is just the standard operating environment for anyone doing something great. Most people fail not because they weren't strong enough to fight, but because they weren't patient enough to endure. The Iron Monk protocol requires you to shift from a skirmish mindset to a siege mindset. You must build a life and a routine that you can maintain for a decade, not just a week. This means prioritizing sustainability over intensity. If your success depends on everything going perfectly right this month, you haven't built a fortress, you built a tent. You must embrace the long, quiet grind and find peace in the repetition of the wall. Stop looking for the exit and start mastering the interior of your castle. Rule number 5. The war isn't won by the fastest. It's won by the last man standing on the ramparts. Expect no relief. Become the relief. The world is loud because it is hollow. A bell makes the most noise when it's empty. But a fortress is silent because it is full. It is full of discipline, full of intent, and full of the power that most people leak away through their screens and their mouths every single day. You now have the Iron Monk Protocol. The question isn't whether these ancient laws work. It's whether you have the courage to be boring enough to follow them. The modern world will tell you that you're missing out. The Iron Monk knows better. He knows that motivation is a ghost, but the fortress is real. Your first order. Don't leave this video and immediately start talking about what you learned. That would be a breach of the vow. Instead, shut the gates. Turn off your notifications for the next 4 hours. Enter the cloister. Do the hardest thing on your to-do list in absolute silence. Expect no relief. Don't look for a pat on the back. The work is its own reward. This is hypothetics. The siege has begun. Stand your ground.